A small blessing. From me to you.
Hello War of the Visions fans, I'm Jackie Fox, and recently I took kind of a granular look on how the meta has changed over the last month, but I think what's going to be even more interesting, especially with the power that we're going to be getting with the Ashen King and the Final Fantasy VII Advent Children collaboration, most likely. I mean, it still hasn't happened on JP as I'm recording this, so it's a little hard to be certain how powerful this is going to be, but I think I've made really conservative estimates that try not to account like broader meta things that these units are going to do. Like, what does Kadaj being another unit with a large AoE courage re-raise removal do to the meta? How does that devalue units that rely on their courage or re-raise for getting special effects? Or how does Sephiroth's curse ability completely invalidate most teams that rely on having a lot of healing? That could even potentially be really rough for June the Spring Celestial, even though she's in his counter element, because she definitely relies on having a lot of heals to keep her in the game. All of these questions I'm going to try not to examine, because those need to be examined through trial and error. What I am going to say here is all the conservative bets on people who their element is improving for whatever reason, their team compositions are improving, vision cards are being added, or units are being added to their element, the things that are obviously going to go up, which also means that there's probably a lot of things that are going to go down that I'm not thinking about here. So this is more focused on what's going to be improving as opposed to what's going to get worse. But let's get that started with our most improved award for Fire. Even though Fire is my lowest ranked element at the moment with 5 out of 10 stars, where par is about 7, they're going to be par with Sephiroth. I think having a unit that powerful really does a lot to revitalize them. They have enough unit choice that they can back a new powerful unit up pretty well. But they were having a little bit of trouble building a solid and consistent 3-man team at the moment. But given that they have kind of a shaky footing to begin with, it's a little bit hard to say that they'll definitely go up to 7. That is a big jump. They didn't need very much to make an improvement in my mind, but this is still a bigger bump than I'm giving anything else on this list, potentially. So I just want to put an asterisk on that potential 7, because it may not work out to be quite that good. But also, in conjunction with that, they're also getting Volke as a unit, so they're getting more new units than some other elements other than like Earth are getting, and one of Earth's units is a little bit more theoretical at the moment. So they may be justified in moving up to 7, but I think that's kind of a lot. So we'll see how that shakes out. For Water and Ice, they have different reasons of moving from 7 to 8 respectively, so they're going to be tied with Dark for second most powerful element in the game, and being honest, 9 out of 10 for Light might be a bit much at this point. Sure, they do have Helena, they do have like Stern and other high value units, and really the reason that they're at 9 when no one else is that they have continuously and historically gotten the most free units, so they're the easiest to build no matter when you started the game, and have the best odds of being easy to build into the future. So it's just a really good element to start out in, and nobody else really throws you the training wheels that Light does. So even though I think on the top end Light is probably vulnerable to Water and Ice at the moment and will become more so into the future, I definitely think both of these can graduate themselves to being near that power. For Water, it's going to be because Kadaj is really going to be bringing a lot into the element. There's also like other Water Katana, so like Water Katana itself could be a hyper specialized team. Maybe Kadaj, Astrius, Dia, something like that could work out particularly well for them. Light itself, while it's already at 9, Cloud would really revitalize them potentially to the point where that caveat that I just said, to where they don't necessarily compete with these other two competitively, well, that could become less true. And Light could be a lot more deserving of that 9-star, 9-point rating. It might not be as much those free units anymore that are really causing it to rank up. It may actually be standing competitively at an 8 and then bumped up to a 9 instead of what it feels like now, which is more like it's an average 7 that just has a lot of free units and is easy to build, so why not give it a 9? For Pierce, I'm thinking about making this S tier. I'm not sure that it will be able to stay there, but with Volke, it gets its first solid tank. So having a really powerful tank for them, I think, is really going to help them a lot. It's also going to allow them to diversify into more rainbow compositions, which I think is really powerful. It also means that there's at least one Pierce VC coming up in the future. There could be more of all of these VCs within this time period because we still don't know all of the job types for the Final Fantasy Vision cards. And it looks like they're going to be a little bit more specific than maybe I was thinking in my last video. So who knows? Maybe there's another Pierce VC that helps them too. Strike also, I think, could be S tier. I think it's going to stay there. And I think, one of the big things, it's less about what they're getting, although getting a new free unit is a big deal, especially when they already have one, maybe two, depending on how you look at it. Getting a second Tifa specifically is pretty helpful for them. Again, I really add a lot of bonus points for having free units within your ranks, so that's definitely helpful for Strike. And one of the things that I didn't factor in as much in my previous estimation of them, which put them at A tier, was just how good their units were. So getting another unit, especially a free unit that is likely to be very solid, maybe even stronger than some of the 100 costs we're used to, I think her and Kadaj could be just a little bit stronger than that because, they might be 90 costs, but power scale to the 100 that Cloud and Sephiroth and Joom and Ashen Mont represent, not the 100 costs that we're used to. But the one thing I can say for certain is that Katana will definitely be S tier. It may only get one Vision card, but it's likely to get two, if not more, out of this collaboration. But there's just a really strong... Katana was already very strong. It's been getting stronger recently. Dario almost pushed it up to S, giving it a tank, much for the same reasons that I'm moving Pierce into S tier. I definitely think that Katana could make it with some of their recent changes, but also I think getting both Kadaj and Sephiroth is just going to be mind-blowing. They're almost certainly going to be the strongest thing in the game, other than maybe Greatsword, which is going to remain an S tier, but I just wanted to point out that they're getting at least one Vision card and one new kind of meta-defining unit. We'll have to see how strong Cloud is tomorrow, but it definitely looks like they're going to remain in S tier, if not becoming kind of strong and maybe even equal to Katana, which could mean that we see a lot of like Cloud versus Sephiroth style teams, or even ones that have those champions, even if it's not like using both Clouds versus both Sephiroths or anything like that. Knight, I'm gonna have a very easy time of moving to B tier with the Ashen Mont. This was a very defensive job type. It just didn't have the damage to beat anything essentially, so I think bringing in Ashen Mont is a big deal for them. Bradley is also a knight, which is very helpful. That's going to give you, Earth's main DPS at the moment, plus Earth's future DPS on the same team with maybe a strong tank, maybe even Veritas of the Earth, into the future, of course. And although he's not a knight, maybe most of the knights are tanks, so you could definitely find a strong tank out of the rest of them. But Earth Knight might definitely be a thing. Earth in general coming up alongside Knight with the Ashen King. But this was C tier before. It's definitely going to be B tier after this. It might even be higher. Bradley, Wing of Destiny, Stern, and Ashen Mont could be a really big deal. There's a lot of potential teams here. Could it make A tier even? I don't know. I mean, the Ashen King is a big deal. I don't know how much he fixes what's wrong with the job at the moment, but he definitely could, and he has a lot of potential too. Finally, one of the only demotions that I'm going to be doing other than Lightning is to Red Mage, and that's because its competition in S tier just fields better teams. Sure, it has this chameleon-esque ability to blend into other strong teams because it has incredible VC partnerships in a way that no other job does. And while this is unique, special, and very powerful for Red Mage, I think without the ability to field its own super powerful team at the current moment, it just can't be S tier because it's got too much competition within that tier, and therefore I'm going to have to move it down to A tier until it can find a champion. Now, it definitely has a lot of potential to come back into S tier very easily, but again, I'm going to need that champion Red Mage to make that happen. And then looking at the top 60, we're going to have to move some guys out of C tier and just get them out of here because I've got a lot of new units that are going to be entering this chart. Ashen Mont, Cloud, and Sephiroth from Advent Children are definitely going to be S tier after this collaboration hits. We've already seen why Ashen Mont is S tier, and considering that my S tier includes not only the newest tier of units, but also kind of the last year's hottest units and things like A2 and Alaya the Alabaster, that there's basically no chance that these 200 cost collaboration units, being the two most iconic Final Fantasy characters ever to most people, are not basically the best thing in the game, and barring that, definitely as good as the best units of the last year. So very easy S tier for those two, even though we haven't seen them. For A tier, Tifa from Advent Children, as well as Kadaj. Again, these could be S tier units. I don't know how they're power scaling the 90 cost for this, you know? Like, if it was a normal 90 cost... I mean, we're already talking about, like, with Shimmerlance, 70 cost units are definitely making it into, like, low A tier. So 90 cost units, new 90 cost units should almost certainly be able to make A tier, if not high A and maybe even S at this point. Kadaj probably has more potential for that than Tifa, just because she's a free unit and he's a gacha unit. I would assume that he's going to do well, but also being a water unit and being a katana unit gives him a lot of really strong synergies at the moment, so I think he has the best chance of being an S tier unit. Veritas of the Earth, with the caveat that it's going to be a while before he's actually viable at 140, could almost certainly be an A tier unit, maybe even an S tier unit, but again, it's going to be a while before he comes out, so it's hard to say that. But also, I don't really have any other tanks in S tier, and he's not necessarily better than those other tanks either, so not really sure that I can even put him in A tier. And then we have Stern, Wing of Destiny, and Howlet. They were already really strong B tier choices, and among the other units of their element, I looked at them and I said, you know what, you two guys are probably a little bit better, but not enough to move you up a tier. Howlet is getting an ability awakening. I think it's the Master Ability 2 awakening. Stern is going to be moving up in terms of stonks because he's now going to be a partner for Bradley and the Ashen King, so he could be really powerful there, and I think that that's just going to make him more useful in general. So both of these units, which only needed a little bit of help to make it into the A tier, I think that they can definitely make it into the A tier, with the Ashen King being out for Stern, and Howlet with his upgrade that's going to be coming, I believe, the week after the Ashen King or so. And then looking at B tier, this is almost certainly where Volke lands, especially long term. He may be more of an A tier unit when he initially comes out, and that may fade once we start seeing some of these new damage dealers. But I definitely think that he's B or better. Uriel, I'm moving her up from C tier just because I think that she's going to potentially have some really strong partners with Veritas of the Earth, also Ashen Mont. She runs really well with 2P as it is, so maybe if you're running like Ashen Mont, 2P, and Uriel, or maybe even into the future, All-Earth Strike Team with Veritas of the Earth, 2P, and Uriel could also be strong. I also think that, given that there's going to be a couple of new options for Strike, that there could definitely be room to move Katone, Ashen Lunacestus Katone, into B tier. I really meant to put her in at least C tier for the last video, so this is just kind of correcting that mistake from before. And then I think into the C tier, I probably have to add Bronwell and Celeste. Bronwell, just because she's kind of a good, just greatsword, is doing so well. I've seen Bronwell on those teams. She's never the best unit for them. Like, this really isn't the unit you want on your team, but if you have two other greatsword units and you have Bronwell, you're doing pretty good. I think the fact that she can do pretty good on a team like that is definitely worthy of her being C tier. And Celeste is a really fascinating knight that could work incredibly well as a bait member for Ashen Mont teams. because she has the job synergy with Ashen Mont. She has the job synergy with like Bradley or 2P, depending on how you want to diversify your damage and ability to overcome other teams. So she's going to bring in the lightning units to take her down, and then those units are just going to stomp them. So she definitely has a lot of bait potential, which I think makes her interesting enough to put into the C tier. And then, finally, here's my predictions for Guild Battle, because I think that we're going to see a variety of units going up, either because they're gaining vision cards that support them, team members that support them, or their elements are just getting better. And I think that there's others that are going to go down, not necessarily because of bad interactions with all of these, although this will hasten any one of these units fall out of the rankings. But I think it's more that just they aren't getting anything to boost them anytime soon, or they aren't getting as much. Again, some of this could change with the vision cards depending on what other jobs are included with the collaboration. But units I expect us to be seeing used more that are already on the top 25 at the moment. Dario, the Crystalborn, absolutely, with his synergy with future Katana. Like, he's going to be a big part of why Katana will be S tier. So I think that he's probably one of the bigger beneficiaries of new meta stuff. It's kind of hard to imagine Sephiroth getting any more prevalent. He did kind of get knocked back by like A2 and Vivi recently, but I don't necessarily think that he's going to rise up to the place that he was, if only in part because the new Sephiroth may overtake him and just move him down. Even if he does get more used, relatively speaking, just because he has more competition. Stern, Wing of Destiny, for his inclusion on those Ashen Mont teams that I was talking about earlier. But also Lightning and Squall for the same reason. I didn't necessarily think that these were strong enough to move from C to B tier, although maybe Lightning is. I find her really useful, and I haven't played with Squall as much, so I can't comment as much there. But I think that alongside Stern, and probably also Bradley to a degree, because I think that this really brings him back into the game a lot with Ashen Mont. Those 4 units will all definitely be big beneficiaries of the increases tonight. And then there's going to be Astrius and 2P. Astrius himself is going to be benefiting from just being one of the most solid third members for a greatsword team. If someone doesn't have A2, for instance, with Cloud coming out, Astrius, Cloud, and Joom is going to be the strongest team you could probably build. You know, him getting more teammates, I think, is going to be good for him. Although at the same time, I think there are certain teams at the very tippity top that might trade him out for Cloud. So this might be a little bit more of a wash for him. But at the same time, like, I think he's going to do relatively well compared to other units that are already in the game. And then 2P, I think 2P is probably going to do a little bit better. I definitely see more potential for her as a bait unit, kind of like I was talking about with Celeste, and also to a degree Dario. But also, you know, her evasion is working. And I think that it's probably going to be a really helpful strategy with Ashen Mont to have Ashen Mont and evasion. It just looks really powerful to me. It looks like one of the better things that Earth is doing at the moment. So I think 2P is going to be a lot of the Ashen Mont Earth themes, even though she doesn't necessarily share a direct synergy. And, you know, the idea that Tifa is coming to the game as well as another free unit definitely kind of boosts all of the strike units, but I think Alaya and some of the other strike units are getting countered by some of this stuff, so they're more of at a wash, where I think 2P is probably in a better position to just strictly profit from these changes. And then units I see going down, again, these aren't necessarily bad units, it's just I don't see anything coming that's going to make them better, and I see a lot of units that are going to be wanting places on the top 20, so somebody's got to lose ranks, and here's the units I think it's going to be. Vivi, Roth, Flagbearer of Reformed Glaciella, Helena the Black-Robed Witch, not original Helena, but middle Helena, I guess, Dark Fina, Elena, Bartz, Sotley, Addison Ray, and I think there's even definitely the chance that currently non-limited Helena. It might be a little bit different because she's so powerful, so iconic, and not limited. But I think that this might actually, one of these characters, like, be it Cloud, be it Sephiroth, be it even like Ashenmont or Tifa, someone is likely to knock her out of first place. So I'm only really including her on the going down list, not because she's not going to be good. In fact, she'll get a pretty cool partner in Cloud here. But just because there's very likely to be a unit that will finally overtake her dominant place in the meta with the inclusion of all of these new units and all these new S-tier units as well. It's also possible that current units that I listed, like maybe Dario or Astrius, maybe even A2, but I didn't suspect she would go up as much necessarily because her collaboration's gone, so no one's going to pull her. And I think people are already using her at the peak. Like, if you have A2, you're already using her most likely, so it's not like more people can do that necessarily. Whereas Astrius is a little less limited and might have a little bit more of a come up. Honestly, this might push June not being limited and being probably the best member of the Great Sword team, Cloud notwithstanding. We'll see how that works out. So she might benefit a lot, but also, her not being a limited unit means more and more people will get her over time, so she's gradually going to rise up in the ranks as well. But I'm not necessarily sure she's going to go up within the same time period, even though nothing that I see here necessarily directly counters her super well. So she is definitely still a good investment, even though I don't necessarily see her usage going up in the future. I definitely think she's a beneficiary of a lot of these changes here. And she might also just be really powerful on a team with Kadaj and more of a water element only kind of thing. That could be another cool thing for her. So maybe she's on the way up too. Maybe, you know what? Maybe I've talked myself into it. So with all of that being said, man, that was a lot too. I hope that you're kind of better prepared to understand what's coming, what you might want to help build up your team, who you want to reincarnate to work with those characters, and maybe who you should be avoiding investing in at this exact moment. Because I feel like this is going to be one of the bigger shakeups, and I don't necessarily think I'm going to be doing videos like this too often, especially since the global to worldwide window is so much shorter now that I don't think that content like this has as huge a benefit. But I think that things are going to change a lot over the next month or so. So it's definitely important to have some foresight about that when you're planning how you're going to build your teams out and what units you're going to be saving for and pulling for, and, you know, vision cards as well, because a lot of these job synergies, you might want to start looking through your VCs now and trying to find your Katana VCs and putting those on the daily grind. Maybe even Knight VCs as well. Knight VCs might actually be kind of important now. Great Sword as well. So, you know, you've got a lot of options there. A lot of things to look out for, a lot of things to look forward to, and a lot of things that could be changing. So, exciting time to be playing the game, and if not, a bit of a trepidatious time to be investing in things that currently exist. So, maybe save some of those reincarnations for later, unless you're working on a character like Doom, or one of the ones I said is likely to be increasing in value. Dario might also be a good investment, but I think one of the bigger deals here is to wait for one of those S tier units and use it to raise your account's power level the fastest. But also maybe even save up for Tifa. Tifa might be pretty important since we're all getting her. She's a little bit easier since you don't have to pull her, but you do still have to invest in order to build her up. And I'm not, you know, again, she hasn't been released yet, so we're not necessarily sure how powerful she's going to be, but I would expect her to be pretty impactful. So you might even want to be saving for that. But those kind of answers I'll be coming at you with in a future video once a little bit more of the collaboration has been released. We've seen more of the vision cards. We know what some of the specialized equipment or any of that type of stuff is going to be for this, because there are a lot of question marks as the collaboration hasn't even launched yet on JP at the time I'm recording this. So yeah, a lot of speculation here, but I think I looked at this from a pretty conservative lens. If anything, a lot of these things could be a little bit more drastic than I'm suggesting, and a lot more complicated and convoluted, but I generally think that the things that I just said are going to happen in one way or another. So, if you appreciate all that foresight, please like and subscribe to get more content like this delivered to your YouTube homepage on the daily. But also, check out that link in the description if you want to support the channel. You can both donate to the channel or buy my books. I super appreciate that. I'd rather, make money through selling my content than by advertising or just asking for donations. So check out my books if you like fiction. Maybe you'll enjoy them. I really hope that you do. If you're interested, links are in the descriptions. There's a couple of different storylines to check out, multiple books in each, and I'm working on more. So I really thank you for checking those out. I thank you for watching to the end of this video, and with all that being said, I'll see you in the next one.